All right, hello everyone. It is Wednesday, July 14th, 2021. My name is Drew Sukup, and on behalf of VMUG, I'd like to welcome you to today's Veritas webcast, Enterprise Class Data Protection for vSphere with Tanzu, presented by Renee Carlisle, Senior Principal Product Manager at Veritas, Simon Robinson, Distinguished Engineer at Veritas, and Dave Smith-Uchida, Staff 2 Engineer at VMware. Thank you for participating in today's webcast and for your continued support in the global VMUG program. Before we begin, I have 3 quick housekeeping items to go over. First, today's webcast will be recorded and available for you on demand. You'll receive an email with the on-demand link, so keep an eye out for that. That should be coming into your email inboxes tomorrow at 1 p.m. Central Time. Second, a short Q&A session will follow today's presentation if we still have time. All questions will need to be entered into the question and answer section on the side, and please feel free to ask questions throughout the presentation. We love to answer questions throughout. I dare you, try to stump us. Meanwhile, hello to the people who have already figured out how to use Q&A. So hello to Daniel, Gilbert, Darshak, and Stan. It's always nice to have you here. All right, third, there will be a short online evaluation that pops up as you exit the webcast. Please take a minute and let us know what you thought of today's session and what you might like to see going forward. All attendees from today's webcast who opted in their information and registration will be entered into a raffle to win a $100 Amazon gift card. The winner will be contacted directly by Veritas, so good luck. Don't expect that email for at least a day. I don't know about the Veritas team, but it takes me a little bit to process some of this. All right, with all that, let's get started. Dave, I'm going to turn it over to you now.
Great, thanks, Drew. So I'm Dave Smith-Uchida. I'm the Tanzu Storage Lead and Data Protection Architect here at VMware. So Tanzu is our umbrella term or umbrella branding for Kubernetes from VMware. And that includes, at the infrastructure layer, our various Kubernetes offerings on both vSphere and other clouds. We have like TKGM, which will run on all the different clouds, including vSphere. And today we're going to be talking about vSphere with Tanzu, which is our highly integrated Kubernetes for vSphere. But Tanzu is more than just the Kubernetes distributions themselves. So we also have things at the top. We have, for example, Tanzu Data Services, which will allow us to install databases and other data services like into Kubernetes and give you a consistent experience everywhere. We have tools for developing for Kubernetes and deploying applications in Kubernetes and Tanzu Application Services. So Tanzu is trying to pull everything together for Kubernetes for our customers, not just on vSphere, but across multiple clouds. And, we've been learning this. It's complicated. All these things are, moving quickly. There's a bunch of different moving parts. So we're trying to pull that together into a nice experience for our customers. Data protection is one of the areas that's actually very new in Kubernetes. And we've been pushing in that direction for a while. And we've been working very closely with Veritas for a while. And we have solutions with Veritas for Tanzu on vSphere. And I'm going to hand it over to Renee and let her go into that.
Thanks, Dave. As you said, I'm Renee Carlisle. I am a product manager here at NetBackup. Been with the company for 10 years, but I was a customer for many, many years before that and worked as a partner even for a while. Long history with Veritas and VMware. I remember way back to the days of VMware Consolidated Backup for any of you that were back that far in the VMware days, and it's just so exciting to see how far it's come. We have a really long history with VMware, over 18 years. I think it's actually probably closer to 20 years now of a trusted relationship and partnership with VMware. Lots of opportunities to be parts of the Design Partner Program, and it's been really fun to be part of the latest Design Partner Program around Tanzu. Dave and I have been working together and dreaming about this, I think, for years at VMworld and lots of conversations about Kubernetes and how that's driving just a real disruption and transformation of the data center And what better partner to lead that transformation than VMware? They are the leader in virtualization technologies. This is that next wave, that next transformation of virtualization. So what better partner to take you through that? And it's been really fun to be part of this and help out with the protection of that environment, the data protection, making sure that you're protected against any issues that might come up in that Kubernetes environment. And like VMware, helping you simplify that. As Dave said, it can be really complex. So we're going to talk to you about how with VMware and Veritas, we can help you get past that complexity to an environment that will really work for you. We've had, like I said, a long integration with VMware, and as a part of that, our integration into the VMware stack goes really super deep. It's our deepest integration of any workload, any platform that we have out there. Really focused on you being able to deliver the platform of your choice in the VMware environment and the NetBackup environment, including now for Tanzu, making sure that whatever solution you choose, it's going to be scalable, efficient, reliable backups, even to the largest of the large enterprise customers. And that includes what we're doing with Tanzu and how we're making that scalable for you. Flexibility of restores and access, extending all the work we've done here from vSphere into the Tanzu environment, making sure that you can have the granularity of restore, you can have all the levels of capability of restore that you need, from a single file all the way up to the entire enterprise is, on our slate and in our thought process as we're building this integration. And then ease of management and reporting. That's going to be especially important as we start talking about Tanzu, because of the fact there are things about this that make it different, that can make it complicated, and so we'll talk to you about how we're going to make that easier for you. So as we start looking at Tanzu and Kubernetes protection in general, we've been having conversations with many of you on the call today, many customers, many analysts, about what's happening with Kubernetes. Why is it unique? Why is it different? And what challenges are our customers having with being able to protect this new type of platform? And we've identified several things that could be potential challenges that you need to think about when you're designing a data protection solution and how we're going to help you with that. One of the first challenges that you could run into is if the solution is under-integrated into the environment. What do I mean by that? I kind of look at this as two sides of the same coin. So the first side is a solution that is not specifically designed for Tanzu and Kubernetes. You need a solution that knows how to work in a Kubernetes environment. It's Kubernetes and Tanzu native. It's not going to impact your CI/CD pipeline. It's not going to negatively impact your infrastructure. The last thing you want is a backup solution that's going to have an impact on your customers doing what they need to do in the platform of your choice. So if it's not completely integrated there could be challenges. However, there's another side to this, and that is if you're in enterprise operations, you likely have other workloads that you're protecting, other applications you're protecting, making sure that you're not impacting that. But your backup administrators also typically are struggling with trying to be an expert in everything that they're trying to protect and making sure that they don't have to have that expertise just to be able to meet your SLAs. So the other side is not having a solution that's integrated into your enterprise data protection platform so that you have the ease of use there, so that both teams can use native tools. And if you don't have that integration, you're going to have an inefficient solution that's going to take more management on your side. We know you don't want to be managing backups in your environment, more impact on your environment. Another challenge that we've heard from customers is this concept of application complexity. Kubernetes is significantly different than a lot of workloads and platforms we've dealt with in the past. And the reason for that is up until now, it was a pretty simple one-for-one relationship. You protected a virtual machine, or you protected a client. Maybe you went to the next step and we protected, the storage that applied to multiple virtual machines through like hardware snapshots or that sort of thing. But it's always been a pretty even relationship. Kubernetes has changed that on its head with the fact that the applications are much more complex in a Kubernetes environment. It could be composed of, up to 100 different components with custom resources, secret files, persistent volumes, all these things that come together to form an application. So you need to understand all the components that make up your business view or business logic application, how they're related together, how to protect them as a single entity, and how to recover them as a single entity. If you don't understand that, it could really put your environment at risk. I was talking to a customer the other day. It's a mutual customer that is using Tanzu. We're working with VMware to go through proof of concept and show them how to protect their Tanzu environment. And they were sharing with us that they had tried to do some of this on their own without an enterprise protection solution to do it. And they missed some custom resources when they were doing their backup, and they tried to recover the application, couldn't bring the application back up. So it's incredibly important to take this tops-down view of the world, understand the entire application, and how to protect it accurately. So it's a different view of the world than we've had in the past. Luckily at Veritas, we have a lot of history with complex applications in our portfolio. We deal with our resiliency platform that orchestrates DR of all kinds of components that all have to come together. We have our clustering solution that has to understand relationships and how to bring services up and in what order and how to correlate them. So we have a long history in this space, and we took that knowledge and applied it to Tanzu. And the last big challenge we've seen from customers is this gap between on-prem and in cloud. One of the beauties of Tanzu and Kubernetes is being able to be platform agnostic, be able to develop once and deploy it anywhere, being able to spin it up in multiple clouds. That's one of the things that's driving our customers to use Kubernetes in the first place. And if you don't have a solution that understands how to protect on-prem and in the cloud, span between those, treat those as really just one environment. If you depend on the cloud vendors, for example, to do the cloud deployment and another vendor to do on-prem, and maybe you have multiple clouds and you're depending on those independent cloud vendors to do their own independent protection, then you have a very fragmented environment. And that takes away from one of the key drivers of Kubernetes. So we really wanted to help customers solve this problem with this unification of the environment so that it wasn't fragmented. So let's talk about what we did differently for Tanzu to help solve these challenges for you, our mutual customers. The first thing we did is we really wanted to focus on operational simplicity and optimized environment. And this, back to that two sides of one coin, we realized we had to optimize it for two different groups. We needed to make sure it was optimized for Kubernetes. So just like we do vSphere data protection differently than we do, a typical operating system or a database protection, we also realized that Tanzu needed a unique type of data protection. And that was going to also require that we build custom resources, custom Kubernetes native constructs to go into this environment to do it right. So our solution was built from the ground up to be Kubernetes native. We have Kubernetes custom operators that we have designed and built to sit inside of the Tanzu environment. We use native tools like Valero from VMware to help facilitate the snapshots. We use things like CSI compliance for storage so that we have a compliant Kubernetes native environment there. We use Helm charts for deployment. So we really tried to focus and make sure that everything we're doing in this environment was really built, designed, operated, implemented in a Kubernetes cloud native way. But again, that other side of the coin was our NetBackup admins and all this great learning we've learned over the last 20 years on how to do the best data protection for VMware we could. We don't want to lose all of that. So bringing it into the NetBackup framework allows us to do things like bring it into our web UI for a very simple interface that within a couple of clicks a NetBackup admin that doesn't know anything about Kubernetes can automatically be protecting that environment, meeting their SLAs, doing restores of that environment without having to be that expert. And we can start bringing advanced capabilities that we've brought to VMware to the Tanzu environment. We'll talk about a few of those a little later in the session, but things like thresholds so that we're not impacting the Tanzu environment by running backups. So two sides of the same coin, optimized for both users. The next thing is around this application centric, this complicated many-part distributed application, understanding how that works to make sure that we're really fortifying the environment. We're really focused on the application layer. So we really took that tops-down approach. So we're not protecting a container. And I've had this conversation, generally with like salespeople, like, no, we don't protect containers. They're ephemeral. We're protecting applications and data that lives on top of Tanzu, right? And those applications, like I said, composed of many, many parts. So we really took a tops-down view, understanding everything that makes up an application, being able to protect it as a single entity, being able to recover it as a single entity, or doing some granular recoveries of that environment. In today's world, what we have found from all the conversations within our customers is an application today is pretty much constrained within a user namespace. So a namespace is given to the end user, the application is built within that, and today has been pretty much constrained within that. So for our initial release into this deep integration, our application protection is focused on that namespace level. We'll continue to talk to you guys, and if that evolves and changes and applications start expanding beyond namespaces, we'll definitely make sure that we can support and help you there. But for now, we can protect and recover everything, all custom resources, all components, all persistent volumes, everything that makes up that namespace that is hosting the application. The final one is on this unification, really being able to make sure you have the choice and flexibility to choose whatever platform you want to deploy Tanzu on. So we've made sure that our solution can span and work seamlessly and is at the Kubernetes level regardless of where it's deployed. If you have that deployed in any of the public clouds, if you have that deployed on-prem, we see that the same. So you can protect and recover from any Tanzu environment to any Tanzu environment as long as they're the same, for the first release, as long as they're the same distribution and level. So it doesn't matter if it's on cloud or if it's on-prem or if it's in multiple clouds, we see that as just one unified platform. All right, just checking to see if we had any questions here. Please feel free to shoot any questions over that you have. We definitely want to make sure this is interactive. We want to make sure that we're answering your questions, giving you the information that you need. All right, so I want to talk about some of the design principles that we looked at. At Veritas, when we're creating code, when we're doing deployments and creating our releases, we release our software twice a year. As we're integrating into things, there's a core set of design principles that we follow. For NetBackup, for example, one of those is operational simplicity. Everybody that builds anything for NetBackup, when we're creating that, developing that, we focus on, is this going to be operationally simple for our customers to use? It's something that is not just one release specific. It is as we continue to invest and integrate and build to this, we have to keep that design principle in mind. So we spent a lot of time looking at what is our design principles for Tanzu. This is not a, hey, we created this and now we're done. This is that disruptive, transformational new platform in our customer environments. We understand that. We realize that this is the start of our journey with our customers. As things grow and progress and advance in Kubernetes, we will continue to take that journey with our customers. But as we do that, we want to make sure we're focused on the right things. So based on our conversations with you guys, these are the design principles that we have chosen to focus on. One is native tools. Making sure that we can tie into CI/CD pipelines, like I said, making sure that we're building it with Kubernetes constructs, making sure that our customers can deploy in a Kubernetes native way. And we're going to continue to iterate on that. We've got a lot of work, even conversations already starting between Dave and our teams and our engineering teams on what does this look like next. So we'll continue to iterate there. We're excited to see where that goes in the future. Support any Tanzu environment. Like I said, we want to make sure that you can feel free to have the choice to deploy Tanzu wherever you want to deploy Tanzu, and we can support that, treat that seamlessly. You don't have to worry about it not working in a certain location just because you decide to deploy in the cloud. That also includes any level of Tanzu. We know there's different distributions of Tanzu, whether it be Tanzu Kubernetes Grid or we want you to know that we can support any of those layers of Tanzu as well. Application-centric protection, we've talked about that a lot, making sure we're focused at an application layer, not at a container layer, not at a storage layer, but really making sure we focus on the entire application stack. Recovery flexibility. If you know our solution at all with vSphere, you know that we have a deep, deep level of recovery flexibility. In fact, in our last release in 9.1 that just came out last month, which we also delivered our Tanzu solution in there, we even added a few more recovery flexibility options. We added rollback recovery to do an instant rollback of changes. We added some additional CDP stuff in there. So I believe we're up to, with one backup, I think we're at like 9 or 10 different levels of recovery that you can do. So that's very important to our customers, very important for us to make sure that you have the ability to recover from any scenario, regardless of whether it's a single file, all the way up to the entire enterprise. So as we continue to invest in Tanzu, we will continue to add layers of flexibility and recovery to the Tanzu environment as well. That'll be a big focus for us. And then simplified backup and recovery. Again, be able to protect within a couple of clicks, be able to recover within a couple of clicks, be able to tie into CI/CD pipelines and workflows and GitHub templates. Very simple and easy to use. This is a complex environment. VMware and Veritas are here to try and take some of that complexity off your plate so that you can take advantage of all the great functionality that Kubernetes has to offer. All right, so let's talk about what we delivered last month in our 9.1 release of NetBackup. It's our first deep integration, Kubernetes native integration. We've had some sidecar approaches in the past before Kubernetes really got to the level of maturity it is now, and we've learned a lot through that process to now be able to offer this deep Tanzu support. So in our first release of that, agentless full backup of a user namespace, again, that application level, so we can protect the entire namespace, we can recover the entire namespace. That can be recovered to the same cluster, it can be recovered to an alternate cluster. You can also recover just individual resources from a granular perspective. If you just need to pull some resources back, you have that advanced capability. All of the work you can do there, you can do in the web UI for ease of use for simple clicks, or you can do with RESTful APIs, and both of those are fully integrated with role-based access control. So if you want the ability to enable end users to do their own backup, their own restores, you can do that and define the boundaries of what they can do within a namespace level. So for example, if user Jim only has access to these 5 namespaces, you can set some role-based access control boundaries for Jim where he only has access to those 5 namespaces, and then you can decide, can you do backups, can you do recovery, can you do both, and you can define that and enable Jim to do some of his own self-service automations. We support any S3 compliant storage target for our first release, and let's see if there's any. We also have a concept of being able to do this resource throttling. So as I mentioned before, we want to be able to take some of this advanced capability that NetBackup has and bring that to Tanzu. An example of that is to be able to help protect the infrastructure. If you have 50 namespaces in a Kubernetes cluster and you try to do snapshots or backups of all of those simultaneously, it might not be good for the Tanzu infrastructure to do that. So we have the ability to throttle those so that you can start a smaller subset of resources at a time. It makes actually for more performant, more reliable backups, but it also protects the infrastructure that you're running on so those users aren't going to have systems that feel the impact of a backup. And you can also do a backup now, so you can do an immediate backup of the environment. We support dynamic understanding of the environment. So when you connect into NetBackup, and we're going to show you a demo of all this, Simon on our team is going to do a demo for you. When you connect in the environment, we automatically discover all the namespaces on that environment and can then start applying protection to those namespaces. And through our API, you can also do that via a label. So if you just want to put a label on the namespaces, we can pick those labels up and apply them to protection. I think I went kind of out of order, but I think I hit the major components that we have in our first release. Yes, we have a question in the chat. Is NetBackup for Tanzu supported on Google Cloud Platform? We support Tanzu wherever it lives. So it does not matter to us what environment is on. We can support you wherever you deploy Tanzu. All right, so I want to kind of get into a little bit of the architecture of Tanzu and how we lay into the architecture. So what better place to start than to let Dave talk about how VMware has architected Tanzu, and then after he kind of explains the Tanzu environment, I'll tell you what our components are that lay on top of that. So Dave, I'm going to turn that over to you.
Thanks. So this is the architecture for VMware vSphere with Tanzu, which is a mouthful. And it's a complicated architecture. But let me go through a little history of how we wound up here. So when I started with Kubernetes about 3 years ago, we were just getting it into running on vSphere. And what you need to do was you have to go ask for some VMs. So the VI admin had to provision VMs for you. And then they had to give you credentials so that you could do other things. And then you would install Kubernetes into these VMs, which was a multi-step process. And then you would set up credentials, for example, for the original pre-CSI driver, which was the VCP, but then as we moved into CSI, you had to have credentials to allow the CSI driver to allocate storage from vSphere. It was tricky. And, when we started even our own automation that we're building in-house, it's like 1 out of 4 times it would fail to get a good Kubernetes install. So that's not a very good experience for anybody, and it's not good for either side. So from the VI admin side, you have to give up, or you can't control what people are doing in your infrastructure that well. From the Kubernetes side, the cluster side, you say, hey, I want some more resources. Sometimes you can get them in a self-service fashion. Storage you could do through the CSI driver. But if you needed more compute, you couldn't do that. You'd have to go back to the VI admin and say, hey, please make me another VM. Okay, I got my VM. Now I'll go and install some more. I'll go and install the kubelet and the rest of Kubernetes down there and link it into my cluster. So it's not a very good experience. And if you look in the upper left-hand corner, this Tanzu Kubernetes cluster, that's the classic Kubernetes on vSphere cluster there. So what we're doing with vSphere with Tanzu is trying to get this environment so both the VI admin and the Kubernetes users / admins can do what they need to do without running into each other. So we have this structure. We have what's called the supervisor cluster, which is a Kubernetes cluster that's tightly integrated with vSphere. And this is an area where the VI admin has tight controls. So you can do things like create a service namespace and or your user namespace here. And you can set boundaries on that user namespace. You can say things like, oh, here's the maximum amount of compute you can use, here's the maximum amount of storage you can use. And then users and then you hand out credentials for that namespace, but not everything, and to a user, and then they can say, oh, I want a guest cluster. And they go ahead and they write a resource in here that says create a cluster, and the supervisor cluster machinery takes care of creating VMs, instantiating the networking, installing Kubernetes, and then hands over a working cluster to the end user. And they can do things like say, oh, I need some more compute. And as long as they're inside of their quotas, they can modify the cluster resource, they can add some more stuff, and the system will add that for them. But as a VI admin, you can say, well, here's your guardrails. So don't take all my compute. And the supervisor cluster will keep that and keep the users from going crazy. And the other thing is in the guest clusters. So in the original, in classic Kubernetes on vSphere, things like the CSI driver need to be able to talk to vCenter in order to allocate additional storage. What's being done here is all of this, we've taken what we called pure virtualized drivers for Kubernetes, so that when an application running out in the guest cluster asks for additional persistent volume, it actually delegates that up to the supervisor cluster. And so this cluster down here never talks to vSphere or vCenter. And we ran into similar challenges with data protection because we needed to move data. And we had things that were running inside of the cluster here that needed to take snapshots, access the hosts even for data. And so we were able to push all this up into the supervisor cluster and take it out of the guest clusters. So what we've got here is we have the user namespace. So this is something that the VI admin would hand out. It has some guardrails around it as to how much they can use. This is a Kubernetes namespace. And they get to do things like, say, make a cluster. And that will cause this cluster to pop in, these VMs to be allocated, etc. The service namespace over here, this is also running up in supervisor cluster, and this is where we have things like Valero in supervisor cluster and NetBackup up here in supervisor cluster doing the heavy lifting for the guest clusters. And then underneath we have the machinery, and then we have our traditional ESXi hosts. And these are actually integrated very tightly with Kubernetes in this configuration, but we can still run traditional VMs alongside of Kubernetes workloads. So that's kind of the big picture of all the stuff that's going on here. So it looks complicated, but the goal is to remove complexity in operations from both the VI admin and the Kubernetes admin. So all this complexity here is to support a simpler model. So I'll hand it back to Renee.
Excellent. Thanks, Dave. Yeah, and again, just to reiterate, we picked this architecture to kind of show, because it was one of the more complicated ones, to show how, VMware has helped simplify that, what we can do with that, not to indicate that it's the only Tanzu distribution we support. We can support any Tanzu distribution you choose to deploy that's right for your environment. To kind of layer on what we are doing in the environment, fairly simple installation here. We've developed a NetBackup Kubernetes operator that lives in the same namespace as the Valero components, because we're using Valero, again, to facilitate helping with some of those snapshots. And so those two components need to live in the same space. That can be a separate user namespace. It can be in the same service namespace, but we interact with Valero. So we deploy NetBackup Kubernetes operator via Helm charts into the environment. And then we use that with our NetBackup infrastructure and a primary server to communicate to that Kubernetes operator via the APIs for the Tanzu cluster that will help communication between Kubernetes operator, Valero, and our environment to orchestrate the snapshots, to bring the resources. So we have some custom resources that get deployed with that Kubernetes operator for things like the threshold monitoring that I talked about, the scheduling, some of the advanced capability, and then transfer that information back to the NetBackup infrastructure so that we can have the auditing, the reporting, the status, and we'll continue to invest in additional custom resources and infrastructure as we add more and more capabilities into the environment. Everything that we're looking to add, bringing into the environment, we're definitely making sure that it's cloud native. As we bring additional things in that need to be extensible, we'll continue to use those cloud native, Kubernetes native constructs as we continue to invest in this space. So deploy the Kubernetes operator, connect that up to the NetBackup infrastructure, and then away you go. And like I said, we'll be showing you in the demo a little bit more about that process and then how you just start protecting the environment. And so Simon will show you that here in just a moment. The other thing I just wanted to highlight is this ability to use APIs. APIs are so critical, especially in Kubernetes and the CI/CD pipeline. It's definitely been something that for several years now has been a API-first mentality for NetBackup. We leverage it within all of our own stack, but we also did this because many of our customers wanted to do things through RESTful APIs rather than through even any kind of UI for their own portals, their own CI/CD pipelines. So everything that we can do within Tanzu, everything you're going to see in the demo, you will be able to do within within RESTful APIs that all have role-based access control. The other thing we have really started focusing on is really building a community of support for workflows, and this is really important within Kubernetes because so much of this ties into CI/CD pipelines, but it's also been incredibly popular with VMware. So we have a bunch of templates out on GitHub that you can search for, you can look at for both VMware. We've got some Tanzu starting up for custom workflows that you can then bring down to your environment, you can modify. If you're part of our Vox community at Veritas, we're even giving incentives for people that are creating their own workflows to put them on GitHub and create this community and sharing place of being able to create automated workflows for deployment, for configuration, for as you spin up new things and you want to do a series of events in your workflow, maybe you're upgrading something and then you need to do a backup and you need to do a discovery of something, whatever that workflow is, being able to create a whole community for that. So I just wanted to highlight that we have that opportunity. I will take a kind of a sensitive question that just came up on the chat. In my last slide, you saw NetBackup primary server and somebody asking about a primary server versus NetBackup master server. There is a whole effort going on in the technology community, and Veritas is extremely sensitive and part of that on what language we're using and how to do better in this day and age. And that's one of the things that we're focused on, of changing our technology and how we reference things to be more correct, be more appropriate. And so you will hear things like primary server rather than master server. That's just not something we should be referencing, and we want to be sensitive to that and contribute to that. You'll see this is something that a lot of technology vendors are looking at things and how we can be better at our technology. So if you're seeing primary server there, that's what it's referencing, is the controller, the orchestration layer, the control plane of the NetBackup infrastructure. So thanks for asking. All right, before we get to the demo, I do want to also just share with you, there's a lot of resources that we have done with VMware in this space, and we'll continue to invest in this. So there's a lot of collateral we just wanted you to be aware of. So if you wanted more deeper information, you would immediately have access to any of these links, and they'll be shared with you as well. You'll have access to all these resources. We've done some videos jointly with VMware. Dave and I did one PM to PM talking about our solution. We have a joint solution brief on Tanzu that is available. So that'd be a great next step I would suggest, is that goes a lot deeper into the solution, gives you a lot more detail. So I'd highly recommend that you check out the joint solution brief we did with VMware on Tanzu. There is also, we're going to do a demo for you here, but we have a recorded version of a lot of the stuff that Simon is going to talk to you about. So if you want to, be able to show that to Kubernetes members on your team or backup administrators, or just want to refresh some of the things that Simon shared with you, and you don't want to go through this whole presentation again, you just want to see the demo, feel free to check that out. I would also highly encourage you to talk to your VMware salespeople about moving forward with Tanzu. If you haven't started that process, like I said, they're a great leader in this space. They know this industry. They know virtualization very well. So they're a great partner to move you into this next generation. And then talk to your NetBackup sales team, and we can get you a lot of deeper information, help you with POCs, get you involved in some additional resources. If you want to start playing with us and trying this environment, we're here to help, happy to get you set up. Somebody's saying the links don't seem to work. We have, they should all be there, but we will also be giving you resources following this demo and also through Veritas, we'll be sending things out, so we'll make sure that you have all the links to the collateral. All right, with that being said, I am going to turn it over to Simon Robinson on our team to walk you through a demo so you can see how this actually works.
Thanks a lot, Renee. Appreciate it. I'm going to take you guys through a demo of how this actually looks from a NetBackup perspective. This is a demo video, the same one that's in the recording link in the previous slide, but I'm going to take you guys through it in detail of what you need to know. What I'm not going to show in this demo is the actual deployment of the NetBackup Kubernetes operator service. We provide that as part of the standard NetBackup software downloads, as well as the help chart for it. So if you wanted to, if you're a NetBackup Kubernetes admin or just a Kubernetes admin, you can deploy that into the namespace that's needed, or provide that if you're a NetBackup admin to the Kubernetes person to do it for you. So the first thing you want to do is you're going to set up essentially onboarding a Kubernetes admin for role-based access control. So what you want to do here is in the NetBackup web UI, you're going to go into the users under the bottom here in the security tab, and you're going to create a user either through Active Directory integration or manually adding a user, and you're going to create kind of a Kubernetes admin login. Now this login can be used either through the web UI like you're showing here, but the back end of this web UI is completely API driven. So say example, you're going to use CI/CD pipeline capabilities where you're going to build this into an automation runbook, for example. You can create an API key based on this role-based access control of a Kubernetes user right here, the Kubernetes operator service, default NetBackup Kubernetes operator service, the third one from the bottom. And then that API key is used for role and view-based access control strictly for NetBackup for Kubernetes data protection services. What I'm going to do now is log in as this new Kubernetes admin user. I'm going to keep the admin view in the back end open for those NetBackup people on the webinar. And so you can kind of see the side-by-side view. The external window is the one I just had open where I was creating the Kubernetes admins for self-service access. And the one in the middle here is kind of a private window that I've now logged into as the Kubernetes admin. Notice the view is different on the left-hand side of the pane than this new window that I just opened because of the Kubernetes assigned role of Kubernetes admin. Their view and role-based access controls are a little subset different in terms of just giving them what they need to focus on. So the Kubernetes admin will have access to protection plans that are associated with Kubernetes, the workload, the storage configurations that they want to use, and importantly, the credential management for the Kubernetes clusters. So as you onboard Kubernetes clusters and connect them through our NetBackup Kubernetes operator system, you can do that. You can also create custom roles and use any of these other templates as defaults for your view and role-based access controls. The first thing we're going to do when you get into the Kubernetes workload section here is you're going to onboard the clusters that you want. So the only thing you got to do here is click the add button, give it the cluster name or the IP address. Everything's grayed out here for security purposes, but you get the idea. And then you're going to put in the name of the controller namespace where the NetBackup Kubernetes operator system runs. Then you're going to select the credentials that were entered from the security region, and we can store many sets of credentials either per clustered, and this is usually done by a security admin or your Kubernetes admin themselves. It's going to validate the credentials, connect to the Kubernetes cluster, make sure it can communicate with the names, with the namespaces, and that's all you really need to do to onboard data protection, configuration, integration with NetBackup. So it's running right now, and what it's doing is it's kind of automatically discovering all of the namespaces inside that Kubernetes cluster, which is kind of nice because now you don't have to manually kind of go out and choose them or find them. NetBackup will scan and collect all the data through an API call and bring it back into NetBackup's console for you. So you notice here, you can see all the names. Now this cluster has about 800 namespaces in it, so it's actually still running, as you saw on that last screen. What we're seeing here are all the namespaces that it's actually discovered. First thing you want to do is if you have 800 namespaces, you're probably going to want to check the permissions, but also filter based on the names. So here, for example, I can check the namespaces. And what I'll do is I'll just type in Tanzu so I can filter on just the Tanzu Kubernetes clusters that I want to look at. There's a bunch of them here that actually have Tanzu in the name, so I can filter on those. So the one I'm going to use here for the rest of the demo to show you how to do protection and backup is this one. What's interesting here is that not only do we discover the namespace, but we check all the resources inside and discover all the resources and objects inside, all the persistent volumes, the secrets, all the pieces. And this is the application-specific view that Renee was talking about earlier, and makes it so kind of unique, is that we're not protecting individual containers, we're not protecting individual pods, we're not protecting independent volumes or persistent volumes uniquely. We're protecting an application. People who are building containerized microservices-driven applications build it at an application layer, generally speaking on a namespace boundary, which is why data protection is based on this namespace component. We'll do a backup of the namespace, and all of the resources inside are protected, because generally speaking, you're going to want to restore an entire namespace because we're protecting the application. We are by nature going to protect all of the resources inside, but that's, by nature, we're going to collect everything inside. And this is important when I get to the restore aspect, because for kind of granular restore capabilities, we're actually going to be able to restore the individual elements if we so choose, not just the entire namespace, to Renee's point of one pass backup at multiple different layers of recovery. So filtering here, find the ones that I want, namespace. I'm going to use this NGX Tanzu alternate namespace to do the rest of this with, to show you. I can either back it up now, or I can add a protection plan. When you click backup now, it gives you all the list of protection plans. For those of you non-NetBackup people on the webinar with us, protection plans are the concepts of a policy. It defines how often you back something up through a schedule, where you store it. If I'm going to tier something to cloud, maybe through a lifecycle policy, for example, that's all based into what we define as a protection plan as a terminology aspect. So when you do a backup now, you're just going to tell it which protection plan to use, click OK, and start backup. It's really that simple, to the point of how I just showed you, hook into a Kubernetes cluster, automatically pick up what it is, and then pick the namespace you want to start running backups on. If you wanted to protect something ongoingly, you just apply a protection plan so it's protected on a regular reoccurring schedule based on how often you want it to be backed up. And you can see backup now protection point. So that cluster, or that namespace I just backed up, when you click recovery points, what's interesting here is that you can actually see the version of all the resources inside. It's common through a CI/CD pipeline to increment different resources in a namespace based on what's in development and what's not. You may have version 1, version 2 of a persistent volume, or version 1, version 2 of secret files and other things. So if you're going to do granular based recovery, or you want to validate before recover the specific namespace resource versions that you want in that recovery, that you're going back to some earlier version, but by design, this is important to see this in the console. From the recovery option, we really have two options. We can restore the entire namespace, what probably 99% of the time you're going to want to be doing. Ultimately, you can restore like a persistent volume itself. Now, safe harbor here, restoring persistent volumes for vSphere needs an update to our plugin right now. It'll be available in the next release. But what you can do here is select the cluster. If you have multiple Tanzu and Kubernetes cluster, you can restore it to the same or an alternate one. You select the cluster you want to restore the volume or the persistent or the namespace to. You can send it to the original namespace or provision it to like a temporary system generated namespace, and you have the option to overwrite it if you're sending it back to the same one again or not based on that checkbox. Let's look at the entire restore entire namespace, because this is the one that 99% of the time you're going to want to use, because when restoring an application, you're going to restore it back. You have that same option to choose the same or a different Kubernetes cluster in Tanzu. And then you're going to have the option, same namespace, proceed if it already exists, or to an alternate namespace. A lot of people will restore it to a temporary alternate namespace. It's just a best practice for doing resource for any backup and recovery operation. And then you also have the option to override it. Now, here's kind of the magic I was talking about earlier. You can recover all resources, i.e. the entire namespace as it is, or you can select specific resources inside that namespace. So say you're managing just maybe the persistent volume or something, you can just restore individual objects. It's one of those things that you'll want to choose to do as an advanced user. but we give you the ability to do it because it's something that a bunch of our Kubernetes customers have told us they wanted the ability to do as an advanced option for recovery. Not recover the entire namespace, but just individual objects or resources inside the namespace. Earlier, Renee was talking about resource limits. This is something that was introduced into NetBackup many, many years ago, originally actually for vSphere with virtual machines with VMware. It was a co-development effort. And the objective behind doing resource limit throttling is the idea of protecting the front-end application from backup workloads. So say, for example, I said a moment ago, this cluster I'm demoing on has about 800 namespaces. If I didn't have resource throttling and I configured a protection plan to say, back me up all the namespaces, and you weren't really maybe knowledgeable of how to do it, you may accidentally trigger a backup of 800 namespaces all at the same time. You're going to have a bad day if you do that. So this concept of a resource limit, it's applicable to normal VMware as well, but also in Tanzu here, we can actually throttle the number of simultaneous backup jobs per Kubernetes cluster. And this is editable per Kubernetes cluster because not all clusters are built equally in terms of their performance bottlenecks and workloads. And that's how you have the ability to throttle backup operations and really protect the front-end applications from backup and recovery processing operations as well. And so they also can modify the auto discovery capability here from the Kubernetes setting. This is how often NetBackup will kind of query the cluster to find new namespaces and update them. For those that are interested or existing NetBackup customers, you want to know where to download the Kubernetes operator container, you just go to the same place in our Veritas entitlement management portal, and you download the Kubernetes operator 9.1 tar file. So you need to be on NetBackup 9.1, our most recent release to get this. It's about a month old now. And so this is where you get it, same place you get all your normal NetBackup software from. Renee, questions, comments, anything you want to own or add before I pass it back to you?
Yeah, one more thing. I just want to comment on that when we've talked to some of our customers. We understand that especially extremely large environments, it can be difficult and challenging to upgrade to new levels, and there's release cycles there. One, we're working on some cool, interesting things there that will, just to give it a teaser, but because most of the lift on Kubernetes is with the Kubernetes operator in that environment, it makes it really easy if you just want to spin up a 9.1 virtual machine to start to protect the Kubernetes environment, or if you are a NetBackup Flex customer where you can spin up a new master server container. It makes it really simple to start protecting your Kubernetes infrastructure without having to upgrade your entire data center resources. So just want to point that out as an option for our customers if they're finding that being a limitation or a challenge.
Nice add. Thanks, Renee.
All right, thanks, Simon, for that. I think that pretty much wraps up. I don't see any additional questions in there, so Drew, I think I'll turn it back over to you if there's some additional housekeeping, but really appreciate everybody's time and being here with us today. Hopefully you found the session really valuable, and again, if you want more detailed information, reach out to your execs, and we're happy to go as deep as you want to make sure that you're successful here.
All right, great, yeah. Really quickly, while we wait for any last questions to come in, I did just want to highlight some upcoming webcasts for this week. So we have two coming up for the rest of the week, and they both happen to be tomorrow. So make sure that you check out tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Central Time. That's right, it's pretty early. We'll have a Dell NVIDIA joint webcast called Modernizing Virtual Workstations to Support the Anywhere Workspace with VMware Horizon. And make sure that you check out a very important webcast tomorrow, July 15th at 12 o'clock p.m. Central Time. It's a VMware webcast called Unlock the Secret to Cloud Acceleration with vRealize Cloud Universal. Check that one out. I'm going to be there. It's going to be a big one. Some nice stuff happening with that one. I can't reveal too much, but make sure you check it out. 12 o'clock tomorrow. All right, what do we have here? From Bo. Hey, Bo, in Honolulu, he says, good content. LOL, who is barking? That's someone's dog.
My dog has had enough of the basement. She's usually really good in these sessions, but unfortunately she's decided she's through. So apologize for that. That's the joys of working from home with this COVID situation, right? So she's just saying hi and encouraging you all to check out.
Yeah, that's what I heard. I thought I heard your dog barking something along the lines of, make sure you email vmware.alliance@veritas.com or some, I don't know. That's what I thought I picked up on. All right. Well, with that, I have to thank you. Thank you to Renee, thank you to Simon, and thank you to Dave for taking the time to speak with us today. As a reminder to our audience, you will receive a follow-up email with the on-demand link from today's webcast. To find out more about the VMUG webcast program, visit vmug.com and check out the education page. Please make sure to complete the short online evaluation that will pop up as I end this webcast and let us know how today's session went. And from all of us here at VMUG, thank you and have a great rest of your day.